Ladies and gentlemen, my name is James Phoenix, and welcome to another episode of Rise from the Airwaves. You might remember in my last episode, Marcus Shadow joined me to take a look at The Joe Schmo Show, a fake reality television show built on the premise of one person believing it to be real. Now, reality television shows like these have become sort of the fad today in the 21st century, but most people don't fully think through the consequences of such a show. For example, if you think about shows like Big Brother, where the contestants are being watched 24 hours a day, it makes you wonder, how would you feel in that environment? Now, obviously the contestants on this show are aware that they're being watched, but what if they weren't? And for that matter, if you were in their shoes, what if you weren't? I suppose the question you need to ask yourself right about now is,
did you ever have the feeling you was being watched?
But in all seriousness, what if you were being watched without your knowledge or permission? It's something a lot of us don't like to think about and makes us uncomfortable, but it can also make for very intriguing television. Executive producers Jonathan Nolan, whose brother Christopher is head of the Dark Knight trilogy with his help, and J.J. Abrams of Star Trek and soon-to-be Star Wars fame, realized the possibilities of this, and the result was the highest-rated drama pilot to premiere on CBS in the last 15 years. Ladies and gentlemen, I promise you the hype has been worth it. This is Person of Interest.
You are being watched. The government has a secret system, a machine that spies on you every hour of every day. I designed the machine to detect acts of terror, but it sees everything. Violent crimes involving ordinary people. The government considers these people irrelevant. We don't. Hunted by the authorities. We work in secret. You'll never find us. But victim or perpetrator, if your number's up, we'll find you.
The best way to look at this particular show is to look at the characters within, because all the plot lines are usually originated with the backstories of one of the characters coming back to affect their lives today. Therefore, I'm going to go through each character one at a time, talk a little bit about that character, and help you understand some of the backstory and plot lines that are going on in this show. I will forewarn you, it's a highly cerebral show, so do try to listen up. So, the first character to talk about is Harold Finch. Finch is a master computer hacker and programmer, and he's also a secret billionaire. And you'll find out why secret in a minute. But Harold formerly worked for a man named Nathan Ingram, who was a very good friend of his and the CEO of a powerful company. While working for him, shortly after 9/11, Harold built the Machine, a massive computer whose responsibility was to monitor communications and surveillance all over the world at all times, and use this information to predict acts of terror so that they could then be prevented. The machine was sold to the government for $1, the intent of the machine, but before this happened, Harold felt guilty because the machine also predicted non-terror acts of violence, but deleted them at the end of every day, deeming them to be irrelevant. Therefore, Harold built a back door into the machine, which allowed him to receive this irrelevant list, specifically as social security numbers of the people involved. Therefore, since that time, Nathan Ingram has passed away, and in guilt and knowing what's happening with the machine, Harold has begun using these numbers provided to him by the machine in very secret manners to discover these non-terroristic violent crimes and prevent them in order to save lives. Unfortunately, as a side effect of this dangerous work and about the fact that only 7 people in the world know about the machine, because the government doesn't even know that Harold knows, he had to fake his own death to protect those around him from the potential wrath of the government if they found out he was accessing their machine. Specifically, his former fiancée, Grace Hendricks, believes him to be dead, although Harold does still keep an eye on her and ensures that she continues to get freelance artist work so that she can continue to survive. After having done this for a while, Finch has made the decision that he needed to bring in help to prevent these crimes, because unfortunately he can't move as fast as he used to due to some non-specific injuries he suffered somewhere along the line here that have left him with a limp, unable to move his neck, and a number of other minor things here and there. In order to find someone that was similar enough to him that he could pull this off, he went and found a man by the name of John Reese. Now, played by Jim Caviezel. He looks good here, but when Finch found Reese, he was a dirty homeless man living on the streets of New York City. Reese is formerly an agent of the CIA. However, the agency determined him to be a liability, as well as his partner, and tried to have them kill each other, and then called in an air squad bombing just to drive home the point that they both needed to die. Somehow, Reese survived this, and found his way back to the United States, but with the world believing he was dead, he could not go back to his life. Unfortunately, once he was thought to be dead, his then-girlfriend and love of his life moved on, and married another man, but unfortunately that man, shortly thereafter, killed her in a fit of domestic violence. So unfortunately that's kind of, a sad background for Reese. So Reese was kind of lost with nowhere to go, nothing to do, but highly trained skills from being in the CIA as well as a Green Beret. He's effectively a killing machine when he needs to be. So Finch, knowing Reese was in a similar boat as him of having lost everything, the world believing him to be dead, and having a useful set of skills, recruited him to work with him to find the people belonging to these social security numbers that he receives from the machine and help prevent these violent crimes. He essentially, as Finch likes to describe it, he gave him a purpose in life, which is what he needed. Because otherwise, Reese was very depressed, and he might well have killed himself in his depression. So together, they work together, and they track down the identity of the people with these numbers using Finch's network of technology, including his computer hacking abilities, to hack into anything from your neighborhood bank to the Pentagon, and Reese's ability to reign in incognito, sneak into places, be very stealthy, and when necessary, combat and kill people. Thus far it's been effective, and that's the average plot of each episode, is that a new number comes up, sometimes more than one, and they have to track down the identities of these people. The difficulty being that the number can be either a perpetrator, a witness, or someone involved, or the victim of the crime, and so they have to identify this person before they can determine what the crime is and how this person is related. So it's very cerebral as they acquire information about this person via the internet, via tapping their phone usually, via following them, and just to try to figure out who they are and what the story is. And usually they're not who they appear to be at first glance. So it's really very cool to see how that works. With that said, Finch and Reese of course needed a little help in order to properly... That said, Finch and Reese needed a little help in order to properly do their job, because it is such a difficult task. So they've acquired some help over the last year and a half the show's been on the air, a little more than that, real time. The first person that they met is Detective Jocelyn Joss Carter. Carter is a former military interrogator, as well as a former lawyer who went back to the police force, having been there before, following those two careers. She initially left as a result of the unfortunate death of her husband, who was also a police officer. She has a son, Taylor, whom she's raising as a single parent, and originally she was very obsessed with locating the man in the suit, a nickname that Reese has received in the media due to always wearing a suit while performing his incognito spy activities. After chasing him for most of a year, Carter eventually met him and later Finch and understood what they were trying to do and that they were helping people and saving lives, just in somewhat illegal manner. Since that time, she's become an ally of theirs, providing them information from within the police force, checking out backstories, looking into cases, checking fingerprints, things like that when Finch and Reese can't do certain things because of people believing them to be dead. So she's become a valuable asset within the police force, and usually shows up to arrest criminals after they've been dealt with by Reese in various scenarios. She also helps hide their criminal activities from the rest of the police force to make sure that they don't get caught. At the same time, actually even prior to Carter, they also met a detective, Lionel Fusco. Fusco was at a narcotics precinct, former narcotics detective, who was heavily indebted to the cartel, ironically. And unfortunately, his number came up and Reese had to save him. He then tried to turn Reese over to the cartel, as the cartel wanted him for busting up an earlier operation, in exchange for part of the money he owed them. And of course, Reese beat them all up and killed them, and told Fusco not to ever do that again. He then blackmailed Fusco's supervising officer, his, I guess, lieutenant, is that how that works? Chief, whatever, to have him transferred over to Carter's precinct so that they could be partners and work together. Fusco also is a member of a shady group known as HR, which I'll get into a little later, but it's effectively a group of dirty cops, and he's working with them on the orders of Reese and Finch to provide them with inside information as they've combated the group on more than one occasion. Fusco is also a single parent of a son, which is a sort of a running thing in this show, I guess, and he is generally a good man and cares about his son more than anything else, and will do whatever it takes, even if it's not the highest up of deals, to keep his son safe and provide him with what he needs. As I said, Fusco and Carter are partners in the same precinct now. Fusco's boss having been blackmailed to transfer him to Carter's precinct. For the majority of the first season, they didn't each know that they were both working for Reese and Finch until the finale of Season 1, when it was revealed to each other that they were working for them, and since they've begun working closer together to help out Reese and Finch on various occasions, including saving Reese's life on one occasion when things went a little wrong. So that's their role in the characters, and there's only one other real, not even a main character per se, but her name is Zoe Morgan. Her number came up as a person of interest in one episode, and she is a fixer, effectively, someone people hire to deal with crisis management, sometimes on a not entirely legal level, and basically makes situations go away. Her number came up at one point, and Reese and Finch saved her from a deal gone wrong with a client she was working for, and she's since formed an attachment to them, popping in to assist them with various projects as need be when numbers come up, specifically in areas where, for example, one time they needed to go to the suburbs, where a number of the suburbs came up, and Reese showing up doing his Man in the Suit act would have looked bad. So they have Zoe come in, and they pretend to be a married couple moving into the neighborhood to better maintain an illusion. She's also very good with computers and security systems, hacking into those types of things, so not nearly the level of Finch, but she knows her way around certain things, so she's become a valuable asset of theirs as well. So that said, those are our main characters for the show that we see running around. There's also one other side character I will mention, this gentleman here, who, that's kind of dark, I apologize, but his name is, the actor's name is Ken Leung. I cannot, unfortunately, remember the name of the character, but he is, do I have the name? Oh, Leon Tao, that's it. His name is Leon Tao, the character, and his number came up as well. He was indebted to some mobsters for having unintentionally stole money from them, and so Reese had to save his life. He then tried to skip town, but somehow that didn't quite work, and he ended up back in town, and now basically Finch and Reese call him in when they need a guy to run interference or have a distraction or whatever. Usually he helps them reluctantly because he's scared of getting killed, which is a running gag of his, but he's helped them in different aspects on a number of occasions, such as posing as a paramedic to help get a suspicious body out of place, or posing as a multi-billionaire at a casino while Reese and Finch snuck in another side to get information on the casino owner. So very helpful. So those are our main characters and side characters over the course of the show that we see and work with and that we view this world through. Everything is around these numbers and saving the people involved with these numbers, and all of the plot lines that come up usually involve the backstories of these characters and how the numbers coming up can relate to crimes related to them. So it's always very unique to see how that sort of thing goes down. I'm now going to go through some of the recurring enemies on the show, because they're really the driving factor of a lot of the plot lines. However, it's really difficult to peg one as an overarching villain for the series. So, I'll talk about each one, and I'll mention the one I think is the best villain so far, and who I think should be the overarching villain, but none have been established to be in that role just yet. The first villain is this man, Carl Elias. Elias is a mob boss, son of mobster Gianni Moretti, illegitimately, and he wants to take over all the mafia families in the city. There's 5 of them. His goal is to take over these 5 families and then reunite them as one, so that they become the most powerful group in the city once again, and can therefore combat the threat of the Russian mob that has started moving into their territories. He initially appears as a number that comes up, see how they're connected, but he was then posing as a school teacher whom Reese saved, only at the end of that episode to reveal himself as the man Elias, who had been causing them problems for several episodes prior. Elias is now in prison, having been caught by Finch and Reese with the assistance of Carter and Fusco. However, he's still incredibly powerful and operates most of his criminal underworld from within prison. We've seen him do so on a number of occasions, and Finch actually frequently visits him at the prison to play chess, so in sort of a Hannibal Lecter, Xavier Magneto type thing, which is pretty cool. He pops up periodically when they need information on the underworld, or when they want to blackmail him into a favor, or what have you. He keeps popping up, so he's kind of close to a recurring villain. I don't know if he'll end up being the overarching villain, but so far he's the one we've probably seen most of all the villains in the show. So, he's very important to know. He was the first main villain we saw. Also, oh god, that's really dark too. I am so sorry. Hang on. Oh, live people. The next person on our list is this man here, who goes by the name of Alonzo Quinn. We didn't know him at first, but he's the head of the group I earlier mentioned regarding Fusco, HR. They're a group of dirty cops that take bribes from various criminal organizations to help their people and keep them out of prison and make evidence go away and stuff like that. Their goal is to make profit for themselves, which they do via the payments of these groups to do these things. They were formerly allied with Elias and his mafia, but unfortunately, through an event that Reese and Finch triggered, most of HR was taken down and arrested. Quinn, who is the mayor's chief of staff, was not indicted, having not been directly connected, and is still manipulating strings now. With Elias having pulled his support from HR and then being collapsed, they've sought out the Russian mob in an attempt to reestablish an underworld connection that can funnel them money. They fake crimes, they kill people, they do all kinds of stuff. And Fusco is forced to work for them to maintain that connection to provide information to Reese and Finch. The man that Fusco usually works with is this man, Officer Patrick Simmons, a high-ranking lieutenant in HR. He's generally just this hard-faced, badass dude who threatens Fusco whenever he threatens to go clean and generally acts like a jackass. He's normally the field guy whenever HR business is going on. You'll usually see him in the background. And he reports directly to Quinn. So, he's the one that effectively brought Fusco into the organization after Fusco was forced to kill a member of HR or be killed. And so they had him make it go away. So HR is another main recurring villain, both their connection to Elias and their connection within the police force itself. So, they're another main recurring villain organization to keep an eye on in this show. You might remember when I mentioned Reese's background, that he had a partner who was also killed in the large explosion when they were blacklisted, and they air-bombed them to prevent them from giving away any knowledge they had of the project they were on at the time. Well, she survived too, and her name is Kara Stanton. She showed up a while later, stalking FBI, or I should say CIA agent Mark Snow, who was their former boss in the CIA. I don't have a picture of him here, unfortunately. Do I? No. But she effectively kidnaps him after he gives up trying to get Reese, which is where he's initially introduced, is trying to find Reese and basically kill him because he finds out he's alive. And Kara kidnaps Snow and uses him as a pawn while working for an organization that found her in a hospital in China after she was blown up, which is where she and Reese were retrieving a top-secret informational briefcase. And she puts a bomb vest on Snow to basically force him to do what she wants, and she gets Reese at one point as well. Her ultimate goal is to find out why the CIA tried to kill her and what was so important about this briefcase, to the point that she was willing to risk lives to find out why she got blacklisted and lost her life. In the metaphorical sense, not the literal sense, obviously. Although, she's since died in the literal sense, unfortunately, because she used Reese and Snow to break into a top-secret government data-collecting organization and inject some type of malware into the government's computer systems. It's set to go off on a timer in several months' time, and we don't know what it does yet. Finch hasn't been able to determine it. But following this incident where she then triggered the bomb vests of Snow and Reese to get rid of the evidence, Snow snuck into her car, and so when she got back there, the vest went off and it blew up and they were both killed. Reese managed to get his vest off in time with Finch's help. So she's dead, but was very instrumental in having that large malware program injected into the government systems that could do almost anything. Specifically, Finch has determined it's targeting the machine, which is a big problem, as you might imagine. With her mission she was performing to inject this malware, she was working for a secret group that we don't really know the identity of, but we know that its head is a man named Greer, this guy, who is the guy that found her in the Chinese hospital and effectively gave her purpose again by hiring her to do this, with the promise that after she performed this task, she would be able to find out who it was that caused the end of her metaphorical life, and who was trying to buy the secret briefcase that they were trying to stop. It turned out to be Finch, interestingly enough, but we'll get to that. Well, the show will get to that, they haven't yet. But this man is just known as Greer, and he's been popping up lately, performing various cyber-related crimes, effectively acting as a cyber-terrorist for whatever shady group he works for that has yet to be identified. He's effectively performing different tasks to prepare for the activation of whatever this program is. So we've yet to find out anything more about where this goes, but this storyline is definitely ongoing, and could prove to be a more overarching villainship than Elias, HR, or anything else. We'll find out. The next villain I'd like to talk about is this gentleman here. He goes by the name of Special Counsel. We don't really know his real name, but he works directly for the government, and he is the man currently in control of the machine. Specifically, he works for an office of Special Counsel, the United States Office of Special Counsel, hence the name, and he is in charge of protecting the machine at all costs and killing anyone who finds out about it. He's currently been targeting Reese and Finch, believing them to be tapping into the machine somehow, and we also saw that their office had people working numbers as well, the real numbers that prevented acts of terror, until they got blacklisted and one of them got killed. The other's in the wind now. We're hoping she returns as a character later. But effectively, this guy works for the government and is probably the biggest threat to Finch and Reese because he has the machine, and he knows somebody's been using it, theoretically. And so if he ever found out who Finch and Reese were and where to find them, he would have them quickly killed to protect the machine. He has some associates that work for him as well, well-trained assassins and things that have threatened Reese on more than one occasion. So they've got to keep tabs on this guy. So, next on the list is my favorite of the villains. This woman, who goes by the name of Root. Her real name is Samantha Sam Groves, but she is the one computer hacker program on the planet that can match Finch, if not outright hack him. She grew up in a small town in the South until her best friend was unfortunately killed by a married man in town after he was having an illicit affair with her / raping her. But she became obsessed with finding the killer and was also obsessed with computers from a very, very early age. She has effectively found Finch because she's discovered the existence of the machine, or at least theorizes it based on evidence she's seen. Her goal is to get a hold of the machine and, in her own words, set it free. We don't really know what that means, although personally I theorize that she wants the machine to effectively not just detect these criminal acts of terror and give the numbers to the government, she wants the machine to protect everyone. What I mean by that is, in Finch's, some flashbacks from Finch, we've seen him programming the machine, and it has a very powerful AI. Initially an AI that was bent on protecting Finch by following him and telling him when bad things were going to happen to him. I believe that Rue intends to release the machine so that it tells everybody when bad things are going to happen and effectively watches everybody and protects everybody. And therefore is this godlike thing that, you know, keeps everybody safe and effectively reduces crime. Unfortunately, the machine is also very dangerous, and as a result, they can't let her get a hold of it. She's made several appearances, one of which, her first, she actually kidnapped Finch and took him across the country to Texas, and Reese had to get him back. Recently, she popped up again, actually working for Special Counsel as a secretary, unbeknownst to him who she actually was, and used those connections to find the other group of people who were working numbers for Special Counsel and track them down to try to find out more about the machine. Thus far, she's in the wind again, but she may be also one of the biggest threats to Finch and Reese, as she's the only one that can out-hack him and out-program him, because otherwise Finch can hack his way out of almost any kind of problem. So I'm hoping she's the overarching recurring villain that will be the main villain of the overall series as we go on, but we'll have to wait and see exactly where that goes. So those are all our main characters, villains, heroes, everybody. So hopefully you get a kind of gist of how everybody's background is integrated, everything's involved, a lot of cerebral plot lines. And while each episode contains, here's a number, we've got to prevent this person from being killed, hurt, or from committing a crime. But there's also the overarching stories that go episode to episode. So it's serialized, but in a way that works, where, despite the overarching plots, it can still have the mini episodic plots. Offhandedly being a science fiction fan, I compare it to Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Because in addition to having a contained plot within an episode, there was also these long overarching storylines that continued through the series, that built up, and that made the series what it was. And this show's very similar. But that shouldn't be much of a surprise given this is from J.J. Abrams, creator of Lost. Although this is much easier to understand, I assure you, being a Lost fan myself. So that said, some pros about the show here. Of course, the great cerebral plot lines, like Lost, as I mentioned. It really makes you think, it makes you really see what's going on. There's a lot of twists you don't see coming. Somebody's not who they said they were. Somebody has a connection you didn't know about. It's really cool. The great acting from Michael Emerson, Jim Caviezel, everyone involved. Great, great acting. You know, everything is so spot on. I really do enjoy it. The other thing is, of course, the great action scenes and realistic fighting. Is that the fighting is really well choreographed. It moves quickly, but it doesn't last too long. So you get through the fight, it's exciting, and there's a lot of little cutaway here and there. You see a lot of the moves. It looks really cool. So they obviously have a very good fight coordinator as part of this effort. And I do approve of that. That said, there are some negatives about the show, too. I'm not just here to, you know, overall just say, oh, this is a wonderful show. There's some bad things, too. Specifically, number one, like I said, the plot lines, while highly cerebral, as a result, like Lost, can be difficult to follow and keep track of, especially if you miss an episode. If you miss an episode, it's probably best that you try to at least read the summary so you know what's going on. Otherwise, something may come up later relating to that episode, and you won't know what's going on. And that's a big problem with this kind of show, is you have to have seen everything to know what's happening. There is some slight predictability at certain events, like you know how they're going to turn out. Specifically, they've unfortunately done at least, off the top of my head, 4 different experiences of Reese getting shot, stabbed, and otherwise mortally wounded, and surviving. And it's like, it's not really suspense when the person you're hinting possible death toward is, your main character. You're probably not going to kill him. That's kind of predictable. So some of it's a little predictable, like certain things won't happen because of the nature of the show. The final thing, and one thing that's really a big problem, is this show is not available anywhere. It's not on demand, on cable or satellite. Well, not cable anyway, I don't know about satellite. It's not on Hulu, it's not on Netflix, it's not on CBS.com like some shows are. It's nowhere. So if you miss an episode, you're basically SOL. Unless, occasionally they show a rerun on Saturday night, but other than that, you're SOL if you miss your episode. You better have DVR'd that shit, or you do not have that episode to watch until the DVDs come out. So that's a big issue that I've run into, where if I miss one, I don't know what's going on, and I have to go online and read summaries and use that to best catch up as best I can and catch the episode if there's a rerun. So that's really difficult pain. I don't know if that's intentional on the part of CBS because they know it's one of their highest rated shows and they want people to be watching it live or what. But that's unfortunately another big problem with the show. So, overall, Person of Interest is a great, great show. It's probably my favorite show on TV right now, followed very closely by Revolution, which is moving its way up. So I do encourage you to watch this show. Check it out when you have a chance. It's really a great show. Like I said, cerebral plot lines, great acting, great action scenes. Just be aware that if you miss an episode, you're not going to know what's going on, nor can you find the episode anywhere, and unfortunately, you might get a little confused because of that. So, you stay tuned for that. Remember, some of the stuff's predictable. So with that said, this is Person of Interest. I hope this review has lived up to your expectations of being a great review of a great show. I apologize for a few little nuances in the review here. But overall, if I had to rate Person of Interest as an overall television show a season and a half in, I would definitely give it at least a 9 out of 10, if not more. It's an amazing show. I love it. It's great for whether you're an old, young, everybody. Great show. It's on CBS Thursday nights at 10 o'clock. I do encourage, no I lied, 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock EST, followed by Elementary at 10. Do check it out. It's a great show. And I really hope you enjoy it. With that said, do stay tuned for some upcoming Rise from the Airwaves episodes. I will have coming up soon, not necessarily in this order, but I will have an editorial, the first I've done, on the state of late-night television, specifically the change-out of the hosting of The Tonight Show for the second time in the last few years, as well as a look at some of the other potential hosts that might be coming to late night soon. In addition to that, I've also got a great group review coming up where I'll be joined by Marcus Shadow, Chris the Mole, and maybe a few other XPound members to take a look at the new hit sci-fi show, Defiance. In addition to a TV show, it's also an MMO, so you may see information about it on the Gaming Zone as well. So, that said, do check out those shows. Defiance will be coming soon. That's on Sci-Fi, premiering on Monday at 10 o'clock, so do check that out. It's going to be replayed a lot, so stay tuned for that. I also am going to have a very special episode about Disney songs coming up. That's going to be really fun, really enjoyable. It's going to be a list. Look forward to that as well. With that said, thank you for joining me here at Rise from the Airwaves. I'm James Phoenix, and I'll see you again when I rise from the... Mr. Phoenix, I'm afraid we have a bit of a problem. What is it, another number? Actually, no. It's a transmission that's been picked up by one of the satellites of one of the shadow companies that I happen to have acquired control of over the years. It seems to be emanating from Seattle, Washington. Alright, looks like I have work to do. I'll see you next time when I rise from the airwaves and the ashes.
Don't call me pretentious. I'm sitting here making my own rules.